Let's be honest, you've probably looked at the world and thought, how did we end up here? How did the most foolish, arrogant, and loud individuals somehow rise to positions of power, while the quiet thinkers, the wise observers, and the genuinely kind people are left behind, ignored, or crushed under the weight of the system? You've probably felt it before, that creeping frustration, watching someone incompetent control everything while those who see the truth remain voiceless. It almost feels like society rewards stupidity. But what if that's not an accident? What if that's exactly how the system was designed to work? Throughout history, this pattern keeps repeating. Empires rise, brilliance flourishes, and then, suddenly, mediocrity takes over. The thinkers are silenced, the manipulators take charge, and civilization begins its slow decay. It's a cycle so consistent that it almost feels like a law of nature. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian executed by the Nazis, once said something terrifyingly simple. The greatest evil is not radical, but born of stupidity. He believed that stupidity was more dangerous than malice, because you can argue with a wicked person, you cannot reason with the stupid one. They are possessed, he said, not by reason, but by the slogans and powers of their time. And when you think about it, he was right. Look around. People no longer think, they react. We scroll, we share, we scream, but rarely we stop to understand. The stupid person isn't someone with low intelligence. No, stupidity is something else. It's moral blindness. It's the surrender of one's ability to think for oneself. It's easier to let others decide what's true. It's easier to follow the crowd. That's how stupidity spreads, not through ignorance, but through obedience. Plato warned about this over 2,000 years ago. He described democracy as the breeding ground of chaos, where everyone's opinion, no matter how uninformed, is treated as equal truth. When the masses become drunk on freedom, they begin to despise wisdom, discipline, and truth. And when that happens, the people, overwhelmed by disorder, eventually cry out for a strong man, a tyrant. And that's when the worst arise. Think about it. Why do politicians lie and still get applause? Why do we idolize the rich who exploit, the influencers who deceive, the narcissists who destroy? Because deep down, we are drawing to confidence, not competence, to certainty, not truth. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance realist, understood this perfectly. He wrote that men judge more with their eyes than with their hands. We don't care what's real, we care what looks real. That's why the deceiver always has the advantage. The fool who believes in his own greatness will always outshine the wise man who doubts himself. And so, over time, the crowd learns to follow the confident idiot and mock the hesitant genius. Because in a stupid society, intelligence feels like weakness, empathy feels like naivety, and truth feels like treason. Nietzsche saw this coming. He said the greatest danger to humanity wasn't evil, it was herd mentality. When the individual stops thinking for themselves and becomes part of a collective delusion. When morality turns into slogans, when reason becomes irrelevant and ideology becomes God. But here's the thing most people miss. This isn't just about them, it's about us. You and I are part of this machinery too. Every time we share something we didn't verify, every time we laugh at someone for thinking differently, every time we choose comfort over truth, we strengthen the very stupidity we claim to hate.
Because stupidity isn't a disease of the few, it's a contagion of the many, and we are all potential hosts. There's a strange paradox at play here. The smarter a society becomes technologically, the dumber it becomes spiritually. We know more, yet understand less. We have access to infinite knowledge, yet choose infinite distraction. It's almost as if evolution itself has turned against us. Darwin might say that intelligence is no longer an advantage, it's a liability. The thoughtful hesitate, while the mindless charge ahead. And in a world that rewards speed over depth, hesitation looks like failure. That's how the wise go extinct, not because they're outnumbered, but because they stop fighting. If you've ever wondered why intelligent people feel isolated, it's because they see what others refuse to see. They feel too much, think too deeply, and question too often. But in a culture that worships noise, depth becomes unbearable. We punish reflection, we reward distraction. That's why Nietzsche once wrote, "He who thinks most deeply loves most painfully." Because to see clearly in a deluded world is to suffer constantly. Maybe that's why so many people prefer the comfort of lies. It's not stupidity, it's self-preservation. To stay sane, they must remain blind. To belong, they must betray their own reason. And so, generation after generation, we pass down the same disease, not of ignorance, but of willful blindness. Machiavelli understood this too. He said that truth is dangerous to power, and power will always suppress those who dare to speak it. That's why societies create illusions. They tell us, everything is fine, you are free, your leaders care. But beneath the surface, the machinery hums quietly, keeping the fools in charge and the wise in silence. And here's the darkest truth of all. The stupid don't know they're stupid. That's what makes them so dangerous. The Dunning-Kruger effect, a modern psychological concept, describes how those with the least knowledge often have the most confidence. They mistake ignorance for insight. They speak loudest, act boldest, and convince others to follow them. Meanwhile, those who actually understand stay quiet, uncertain, reflective. That silence is noble, but deadly. Because when the wise refuse to lead, the fools always will. History keeps proving this. Rome fell not because of invaders, but because of decadence. Athens collapsed not because of enemies, but because its people chose flattery over truth. And modern civilizations? They're repeating the same story with Wi-Fi and smartphones. We've built digital temples of distraction, where stupidity isn't just tolerated, it's algorithmically rewarded. We measure worth in followers, not wisdom. We mistake virality for virtue. We've created a world where being informed is optional, but being entertained is mandatory. And so the idiots rise again. Only this time, we elect them. So, what can you do about it? Honestly, probably not much. You can't change the world overnight, but you can resist its hypnosis. You can stop being part of the herd. You can choose to think even when thinking hurts. Because thought, real, painful, uncomfortable thought, is the only
Read, question, doubt. Reflect. That's how civilizations begin to heal, one mind at a time. The ancient philosophers believed that wisdom begins with self-awareness. Maybe that's the antidote to stupidity, not more information, but more introspection. Because the moment you realize how easily you could be wrong, you stop being stupid. In the end, Bonhoeffer was right. The stupid person isn't born, they're made. They're shaped by fear, by conformity, by the comfort of ignorance. And if we're not careful, that stupidity becomes collective until it consumes us all. Maybe the real question isn't why stupid people rise. Maybe it's why the wise keep staying silent.
So if you've ever felt like you don't fit into this world, if you've ever felt too aware, too awake, too exhausted by the nonsense around you, that's not a curse. That's your clarity. And clarity, in a society built on delusion, is the most dangerous gift of all. Because once you start to see, you can never unsee. And once you see, truly see the machinery behind the illusion, everything changes. You begin to notice the patterns in politics, in media, in the workplace, even in the smallest social interactions. You realize that much of what passes as leadership is theater, that most debates are rehearsed, and that the loudest voices are rarely the wisest. It's unsettling. It's lonely. But it's also liberation. Because when you wake up from the collective dream, you stop expecting sanity from insanity. You stop trying to convince those who don't want to think. You stop shouting into the void, and instead, you start doing something far more powerful. You begin to live differently. There's a quote often attributed to Marcus Aurelius: "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." It sounds dramatic, but look around. How many people are living lives chosen for them by algorithms? How many opinions are prepackaged, mass-produced, and sold as truth? In a society addicted to distraction, sanity itself has become a form of rebellion. And yet that rebellion doesn't require a revolution. It begins quietly, in solitude, in stillness, in awareness. When you resist the pull to react to everything, you reclaim your mind. When you stop chasing validation, you begin to see the world as it is, not as it's marketed to you. That's where wisdom lives. Not in books alone, not in theories or doctrines, but in the silence between your thoughts. The moment you pause before responding, the moment you question before believing, that's the death of stupidity and the birth of discernment. But make no mistake, the world doesn't reward that. It punishes it. The wise are often misunderstood, mocked, or ignored because truth doesn't entertain, it disturbs. Nietzsche warned that in times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And that's why so few dare to do it. The tragedy is that those who see furthest are often those who suffer most. The prophet is never believed in his own city. The thinker is exiled. The philosopher dies poor. Because clarity exposes illusion, and illusions are profitable. So the question becomes, will you trade your peace of mind for belonging? Will you dim your perception just to fit into a world that's burning with delusion? Because that's what most do. They kill their own insight for comfort. They silence their inner voice just to keep living inside the dream. Machiavelli would smirk at that. He knew power wasn't built on truth, but on perception. He'd tell you that the ruler must learn how not to be good if he wishes to survive. And maybe that's why honest people rarely lead, because honesty doesn't win in a dishonest game.
But here's the paradox. When enough people wake up, the game changes. Power loses its spell. The charlatan loses his stage. The liar runs out of believers. Because the delusion can only exist if the audience keeps clapping. So maybe the real revolution isn't out there, it's in here, inside your mind. It begins when you stop playing their game, when you stop measuring your worth by their metrics, when you stop mistaking noise for truth. Plato's allegory of the cave was never just a metaphor, it was a warning. Most people live chained to shadows, mistaking flickering images for reality. And when one person escapes and returns to tell the truth, the prisoners don't thank him, they kill him. Because they'd rather believe the illusion than face the light. The light hurts, but it also heals. It strips away the comforting lies we've built around ourselves and leaves us naked in front of the truth. That's the moment of awakening. That's when you realize that intelligence isn't the ability to know, it's the courage to see. So ask yourself, am I thinking or just repeating? Am I learning or just consuming? Am I alive or merely existing inside someone else's idea of life? Because stupidity isn't just out there, it's within us. Every time we choose ease over effort, conformity over courage, pleasure over purpose. The world isn't just run by fools, it's enabled by the silence of the aware. Bonhoeffer understood this deeply when he wrote, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. To refuse to see is a choice. To stay neutral in times of madness is to side with the madness." So maybe the question isn't, why are stupid people in power? Maybe it's, why do the intelligent refuse to lead? Every age has its fools, but every fool exists because the wise man stayed quiet too long. Civilization doesn't collapse overnight. It decays from the inside. When truth becomes inconvenient, when cowardice dresses itself as tolerance, when intelligence hides behind irony. That's how the lights go out, not with fire, but with laughter. We're living in an age where everything is amusing and nothing is sacred, where memes replace meaning, where cynicism replaces thought. And yet in the ruins of this absurdity, a few souls still dare to seek truth. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe that's why you're still here, still listening. Because deep down you feel it, that quiet pull towards something real, something uncorrupted by trends or algorithms, a yearning for depth in a world that worships shallowness. That yearning is not weakness, it's the last flicker of wisdom fighting to stay alive. So nurture it, protect it, think, read, reflect, even if it makes you an outcast, even if it hurts. Because the wise will always be mocked by the blind, but they are also the ones who build what comes after the collapse. And when the noise fades, when the crowds turn on their idols, when the charade finally falls apart, the world will need thinkers again. Not the loud, not the powerful, but the few who dared to keep their minds intact. The ones who saw the sickness and chose not to become part of it. So remember this, you don't have to fix the whole world. You just have to remain sane in it. And that, in times like these, is the greatest act of rebellion possible. Because when the wise finally stop hiding, when intelligence stops apologizing, when truth stops whispering, the age of stupidity ends. Not with war, not with revolution, but with awareness. And maybe that's where it all begins, with one quiet, stubborn soul who simply refuses to be stupid anymore.